Hello, I am Mike Poore, Superintendent of Little Rock Public Schools. I hope that this is a message that you will listen for the entire length of the video. It might be the most important video message that you have received from me up to this point. We've reached out before to discuss budgets and facilities and celebrations, but today's talk is about security. Not security in terms of security officers, but rather in thinking about security in creating caring, safe learning environments for all of our students. Much has changed from when we as parents went to school, let alone changes that have occurred in our state, city, and schools in just the last 5 years. When I began my teaching career, you would have gotten in trouble for locking your door to your classroom. Now all classroom doors are locked. 5 years ago, you would have had easy access into building doors, and now in Little Rock School District, all of our doors on the outside have access control systems to be able to enter into the school. The incident at Parkland in Florida shook us all to a core, but let's not forget that so did Columbine, Jonesboro, and Sandy Hook, just to name a few. We should take a second today, tomorrow, and well into the future to continue to send thoughts and prayers to students, parents, staff, and first responders of those communities, because the hurt from a Sandy Hook doesn't just go away, nor the hurt that Parkland is having right now. We all can feel that. Little Rock and the Little Rock School District, it's important for us to understand where we stand right now in terms of providing safe, secure learning environments. As a district, and me as the superintendent coming in now and close to finishing my second year, I can share that I believe we attack things in a very proactive way. We're relationship oriented, and certainly we do an abundance of training to try to prepare for all situations. There's multiple ways for us all to be proactive. The power of partnership is huge. We use a phrase in this district called the power of us, and that exemplifies that partnerships are powerful. We have great support from the Arkansas Department of Education on issues not just dealing with instruction, but also on safety and security and improving our facilities. I have a great relationship, and the district has a great relationship with the city of Little Rock. We appreciate the fact that Mayor Stodela meets with me on a regular basis, and that Bruce Moore is always a phone call away. Same goes for Little Rock Police Department and Chief Buckner, or the Little Rock Fire Department with the new chief, Chief Hubbard, and previous chief, Chief Summer. We also have fantastic partnerships throughout this community, and I'll highlight that last year we had over $19 million worth of volunteer hours that came in to our schools to support the learning environments. The adults that participated and partnered, those are people that represent faith-based community members, people that are in sororities and fraternities and alumni groups, business leaders, and of course parents. And the value of having adults in the building volunteering is huge. Many of you come in to support efforts to help students become better readers or be more adept at their math. But every time that you come into a building, you enhance our culture and you also improve the safety of that building. So we thank you for that and ask you, if you're not involved in supporting or coming into the building, to please reach out and become a part of our VIPS group, which coordinates the partnerships into our schools. We're proactive in our approach to training. Many of the things that people are looking at and trying to address in schools, we've already accomplished that. We do continual crisis management and planning, and we do this with our partners that I mentioned above. We also are involved with active shooter training. This year we've already had 6 different training engagements on active shooter. We do that with the different law enforcement agencies in Little Rock, and it involves multiple schools, not just for one school. We recently did training for Stop the Bleed. That happened last week at numerous campuses, and we're ahead on that. We also are involved in something called Rave. I want to give compliments to our state. This actually came into our state 5 years ago. Rave is actually an app that our staff and really all staffs throughout the state of Arkansas can download as an app. When you download this app, it's as simple as touching on a button and touching it one more time to enact an awareness out into the legal community that we need support at the school. So all of our staff are armed with that, and we have done additional training on Rave this year. It's important to note that Rave does not have a funding stream at this point. Senator Hendren, if you read the newspaper today, has proposed $850,000 to be allocated by the state to maintain the Rave system. And this is one of those common sense, need to get it done, and you can participate by reaching out to your legislator to make sure that Rave is approved as a budget item for the state to enhance the safety that we have within our school systems. You know, the other thing is with our staff and with our police department, we try to have as much of proactive visibility as at all possible. Now that happens in our secondary schools with 62 security officers that actually are stationed at the 16 campuses. But we also have 11 patrol officers that continually roam and go in and out of our elementary schools, which has, this particular delivery has not enhanced any negative stats, and in fact, we've had less issues using this approach. In the last 30 days, we have had 2,383 patrol units stopping in, and those are primarily 2 elementary schools to come in and out of those schools. This week, my office received a call that said, we're not seeing any type of security officer coming into Williams Magnet. And we tracked that. There have been 83 instances in the last 30 days of a security officer coming in to Williams Magnet. Little Rock Police Department is also proactive in their approach in working with us. They have something called community policing. Community policing involves everything from police officers coming in and training students and being in front of classrooms, to them helping and supporting training that we do with our staff, to them just making proactive stops and being visible in our buildings. I can tell you that we get a personal response anytime that we need connectedness in and from the Little Rock Police Department. That gets exemplified by Chief Buckner, who I had a phone call with yesterday morning prior to 6 o'clock. Always available, always picks up. If he can't pick up, he texts and says, I'll be right back with you. I will also share that Chief Buckner and his team have been with us throughout the last 2 years when we've had other issues of violence that have impacted our community, which then ultimately sometimes roll into our schools. Every time we've had a meeting about school violence, Chief Buckner has been in the room helping and supporting us. Little Rock Fire Department, equally visible and supportive. Chief Summer previously has been a great support, and our new chief is already helping us, Chief Hubbard. Yesterday, I made a call to Chief Hubbard at 9 o'clock. Again, first call attempt, he answers, and we started to work on the man situation where we had a gas leak yesterday and actually had to release students. He was available and supportive and will help us on debriefing that incident so that we can learn from it in the future. You also can be a part of this proactive approach. I'm sure many of you read the Florida sheriff who had a statement that's very simple that came out of the Parkland incident. His statement was simple. If you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. This week, we certainly have had numerous people reach out to us to share concerns. These calls have always been looked at and thoroughly checked. I can tell you that 3 of the calls that came in as we did our research into the incident led to no action, and we were actually able to relay that back out to those school communities, to parents, to share that we did look at it as a threat, we looked at and checked into it, and nothing was found. But on the other side of this, I can share that we had 2 calls that came in of concern that required us to intervene. And we had to take appropriate action as a school district and law enforcement did as well with handling those situations. This morning, Friday, February 23rd, we had a social media buzz and literally explosion, I guess it may be an appropriate way to word it, of activity sharing concerns at Central High School. The interesting aspect of that is that once we looked into that threat, we actually found the thread was to a Central High School that's not even in our state. And we ask that as you look at these threats or you find them within your social media account, please do some research to determine, because every time that those things get pushed out or forwarded, it can create anxiety for folks. And this is already a tense enough time. But if there are issues, then obviously we want to do exactly what the Florida Sheriff shared, which is if you see something, say something. We also can work, all of us, and maybe the most important thing that we can do is supporting our kids. The development of a school culture, the development of confident and connected young person is really the key in terms of elimination of folks that can do harm to others. If you look at all of the incidents of school violence, I believe there is a story that can be told, whether it's the young man who committed the terrible atrocity in Florida to the Columbine shooters. There were clear early signs that needed to be brought out. That can come from a parent who starts to see that their student is disconnected, to teachers that may find that there is exhibiting some form of anger. We need to find those people, help, and give them support. We also know that if there's a real threat that's being presented by some individual, we need to find out about that either through the legal authorities or through our school system so that we can investigate those matters thoroughly. Prevention is really a key then in terms of being proactive, and we can all have an impact. We can all advocate right now for increased support for mental health. At this time in Arkansas, there's a real concern that day treatment centers are closing throughout our state, not just Little Rock, but throughout our state, and it's becoming much more challenging for those that need prescriptions to support some of their mental health disease, that is much more difficult in order for them to get their prescriptions filled, and there's the potential of having less support from our mental health providers to be directly involved in our schools with staffing. So we need to advocate for additional support towards mental health providers. In Little Rock School District, we actually have over 19 mental health providers that work with us on a regular basis to support young people, to support parents, and to support our staff. If you look at this whole trend of mental health and that there's greater challenges, this is not a new trend. And I can share when I was in Colorado that it seemed to be intensifying, and now coming into the state that I hear stories from principals throughout the state and here in Little Rock that there seem to be more cases of students that are having mental health challenges, acting out in more severe ways, and we need to find ways to support that because it's not going away. So we also know that we need your input right now. This is another way that we can be proactive and seek your own support. We know that we can become better in our approach, and we seek your opinion. We will be sending a survey out next week to all parents and also to all of our secondary students. It's important that parents and students participate in this survey. Don't just push it to the side. It will give you the chance to do some rankings, but it'll also give you the chance to make recommendations. And we do seek student input. If you've heard the Parkland students talk and speak and provide ideas of what needs to become next steps, they're thoughtful and I believe on target with many of their recommendations. You can also be a part of support and having your ideas thought and given consideration by joining our PTAs. Every one of our schools would welcome the opportunity to have you as a parent more engaged in the PTA at your son or daughter's school. Please also don't be afraid to talk to your teacher or to reach out to your principal, whether that's an individual issue with your son or daughter or with an issue that you see within the school. I want to bring up one other aspect that I think does tie into this whole area of engagement and also how a student sometimes becomes disengaged and what can lead to harmful behavior. We have an opioid issue that's emerging in our community and throughout our nation. Most of you have probably seen multiple news shows or things like 60 Minutes that have covered this and talk about prescription drugs, how that can lead to heroin use, and now we have a new element called fentanyl that actually is extremely deadly and is used to enhance the amount of heroin so that it expands in terms of having more to provide someone, but the fentanyl is super, super dangerous. There's an antidote, which is called Narcan. So all these are new words possibly for us to tackle and become aware of. And again, we have to go back into the partnership concept of us all working together. This is a police and fire and EMT issue, but it's certainly a security issue for us, and it's also our nurses that are working on this. And we've received training. We've been proactive on this opioid issue clear back before school ever started, that our people have started to receive training. Last night, our community advisory board members started to tackle how we can address this in a policy matter. And we know that in our community, Chief Buckner has shared with me that the chances of OD and there are more people ODing on heroin than ever before, and he doesn't believe that that statistic is going to diminish. Think about this. What causes that? Again, I believe it comes from possibly being disconnected or missing some signs. Something triggers within a young person specifically that has this problem, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to connect them to people that can support their issues. So please be aware, and please help us be aware of how we can support you should anything come up. We do not want to have any harm done to any young person. So I kind of wrap up this particular talk. I will share, we use a phrase all the time in our district ever since I've arrived called the power of us, and maybe now more than ever this phrase needs to be considered and used on a regular basis. There's not one specific thing that can be done right now, one thing that just an end all, this is going to end it. There's not one thing that anyone can consider and say, oh, this is going to make me feel better. Because simply, I can't share that there is one thing that will stop school violence. What can stop school violence is an entire community working together to make sure these type of events don't happen in our environments. We know we seek a caring culture. We know we want a culture that is safe. We also know that we want a culture where kids can be kids and that kids can't wait to get to school the next day. We also want to have an environment where parents feel comfortable and confident that as they drop off their student that they're going to be okay. How does that become possible then? Well, all these things that we've talked about over the course of this speech or this video matter. But if I could nail it down then into just 4 specific things that we all ought to consider. One is visibility. Visibility is critical because the more adults we have in a building, the more safe it's going to be. So we appreciate volunteers, and we appreciate engagement in PTAs, and we appreciate the partnerships that come in as a part of our VIPS program, where we have, again, faith-based organizations, alumni groups, sororities and fraternities and business people and parents all volunteering to participate. We also know that we've got to reach out. That's a second component. Reach out. Remember what the sheriff said, and the sheriff's words, if you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. Reach out. That could be at the very early stages where you start to see a disconnect within your own child or a level of support that you believe is needed. But it also has to be a reach out if you're aware of a threat. Every one of the situations that have happened in school violence, the threat was posted and people did not pay attention to it. Please, third item, please impact the decision makers. We need the support of the Rave panic system that's a part of an app that can be delivered to every one of our staff. We have that in place right now, but there's not a funding stream. Senator Hendren pushed this forward yesterday in the state legislature. please contact your legislator to ask them to support that bill. Please also advocate for mental health and enhanced mental health support for both young people and adults so that our community can be safe. Please, finally, participate in our survey. The data that you share will be looked at, will be reviewed, and will be made public. The power of us. We know safe campuses take all of us working together. I appreciate the support you continue to provide our district and our community. Thank you for listening today, and I look forward to talking to you more on this matter in the near future.